I'm gonna pull it up so I know when it's live. Right. Hi, if you're watching the replay, I don't think you can see us yet if you are here, but if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching the replay. A lot of you do, which is always exciting because I do think it's more fun to be in a live. So it's like a little extra fan behavior if you watch the replays. Like, no, I really wanted to see this. And I really appreciate it. I am super excited for this conversation. I had like the idea, and then I was like, do I even have enough thoughts about this to like do a live, or is this more like a little one single bullet point in another video? But I was able to draw it out as as per usual. I was able to add a lot to it. So I am hopefully going to have this be a regular length live and a super long one. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Heather. If you have randomly come here because of my lovely co-host, or you saw the topic or whatever, I don't know. But I love making discussion videos, and I'm a romance reader, so a lot of times they are heavily focused on that, I guess. But and I love live shows. They're kind of my favorite thing to do. So Robin, we can start with you. Swing around to Jess.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm Paperbacks and Planners on YouTube and Instagram. I am also a romance reader, and I love watching Heather's live, so whenever she invites me, it feels extra special.
Hi, I'm Jess. My channel is Jess Owens. Sometimes I know how to read, and I talk about various things, not just romance on my channel. And yeah, I haven't done a live in a long time, so thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here and flap my gums because you all like to talk.
I was happy to have you. Linnell.
Hello, I'm Linnell, weekend reader on Instagram and I guess Twitter before it goes away. And I too mostly read romance, but I read some mystery thrillers every now and again. So, and I'm excited to be here. I haven't done a live in I think almost a year. So, ooh, hopefully my internet doesn't go out, which is like the thing to happen. But it doesn't look like it's going to storm yet here in Florida. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I know a lot of you have probably seen Robin and Jess's channels, but if you're not familiar with Linnell's Instagram and stuff, whenever I am on Goodreads and I'm like, I need to know something about this book, her review is always right there with all the information that I need. And I will not lie, there have been a few books I've skipped because she was like, and I was like, I moved right along. But I literally cannot tell you the number of times I've been like, oh, let me read her review so I can find out what I need to know. So I'm really happy.
Well, I appreciate that because sometimes I'm just like, are you being mean right now? Can you be a little bit more gentle in this review? So I appreciate that.
You gotta tell the people what we need to know. What we need to know is the truth.
Truth is important because we don't always get that.
We don't. And I can also say I've never read a mean review from you.
Oh, well, then I guess in my mind, I'm reading it as I'm like, oh, I hated this. But, it's extra as mean. That makes me feel a little bit better.
In your head, you're like, I hated this. And in the review, you're like, their characters could have used a little more work,
Well,
I'm sure given time, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, so in a past life, I used to teach college kids. So, I think there's that still in me where it's like giving constructive feedback. Like,
right.
I want you to do better. I believe in you. I'm rooting for you. But internally, I'm like, what the?
That's so funny.
So,
Vina says you give fair reviews too, which I think you do. So you've got fans in the live here. All right. So the very first thing is being reader a big part of your self-identity? I know for me, I would say yes, not so much I don't know that it's like the first thing. I guess if someone asked me what I do for fun, my answer has always been I read books. And probably just because I have been a reader since I was like a little kid has always been my go-to. So I would say it's like a big part of how I view myself. I don't know that it's huge on how other people view me. I mean, if you know me through BookTube, probably. But in just general life experience, I don't know that even probably not even everyone knows I'm a reader anymore. Like when I was a kid, I had a book in my hand so you could tell. But now I'm usually like in my house, so I don't know how much you would be able to tell. But I definitely do like view it as a core part of me. Even when there's been years where I didn't read as much or I didn't have as much access to books or, you know, newborns or what have you, whatever it was that was getting in the way of reading like I might want to, I still viewed myself very much so as a reader. So, Robin, what do you think?
I agree. I have always been a reader, but it's how I see myself, not how I think other people do. I have people that don't even know that I do this nonetheless read books. So I definitely see that as myself and like my close friends and family and stuff. But I would say it's more the hobby side than like the social media side of it. Like I'm a reader, even if all of this went away tomorrow, I think that would still be like a part of my hobbies the same way that, you know, my job is part of who I am. I would say reading is too, since that is my big hobby. I don't watch movies. I'm not a big TV watcher. So I would say from that aspect, yes, because even if social media died tomorrow, I would still pick up books and read them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I definitely, whenever I meet new people, I'm an avid reader. So I think in that respect, I definitely think it's a huge part of my identity. My mom will tell this story, I think, until the day I die. I stole money to buy books in kindergarten. And so she's like, from a early age, she just knew that was going to be my thing. So it's always been a part of my life. And so, yeah, I definitely think if social media went away, I'll still be reading. And I only really use the social media part because it helps me find other readers because I don't have a lot of readers in my life, in my real life. And so that helps me not feel, and I'm going to use the word weird, but like other readers they'll understand like spending the entire weekend reading a series. Like that does not seem unusual, right? And so I think, you know, definitely a part of my personality. And the social media part is an interesting, and I know we're going to talk about it later. That part for me is a little hard to navigate because I really just want to talk about books. That's about it. So
I mean, I feel similar to everyone else. Been reading since I was little, but also like Heather, I don't leave the house that often, so I don't know how many people would just like know. And if I do, I'm usually will half the time I lose my Kindle, so I'll read on my phone or listen to an audiobook, but people just can't tell that. But I definitely feel it's a big part of who I am. Like y'all said, if someone asked me about myself, that's going to definitely be one of my first hobbies. That I mentioned. And also similarly, if social media went away, I'd still be a reader. Now, social media obviously connected me to readers because I also don't have a lot of people in my life that are readers. And so that's been exciting just with finding out more books that are out there and then being able to discuss it with people. It also has enabled my spending on books, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But so I would consider it definitely part of my uh personality. Yes, I'm a book girly.
Yeah. Um, Beth said that she was bullied in elementary school. Have you all had any negative experiences with people viewing you as a reader? I never did. Of course, I was homeschooled and all the homeschool kids were weird readers. So like what were they gonna say? Nothing.
I never was. Like I don't know. And I was like a big nerd. Like I did like math competitions. I never really had like I never had anyone say anything mean.
Yeah.
I also went to a small school though. There was like 1,500 people in the entire high school, so it's like it wasn't a very big school.
I definitely did this. I remember like hiding when we're supposed to be cleaning and stuff and all that.
Yeah, I think in high school, when I started to dance, I maybe had to stop reading. Not had to stop, but in order to like fit in with that group, I stopped reading, but I was friends with all of the librarians. And so they would like hold books for me. And so, I still was able to kind of like walk the line. But I think because I was part of the dance team, it kind of balanced out. Like you just didn't bully, unfortunately, like certain cliques. So, but in middle school and junior high, I was a part of the debate team. And so, no one wanted to mess with us because we were like quick with the insults.
Right.
So I think I always kind of like skated through the bullying part, and still was able to enjoy reading.
I'm trying to think. I don't think there was ever like bullied. I just always found people who were like me. So, and then as I got older, like high school required reading, like put my like reading for enjoyment kind of fell to the wayside. So it was less of that, but like younger and like elementary school and like accelerated reader, I don't remember anyone. Like it was just cool. And I was, you're getting things, you got your little pizza when you would read all of the stuff. But to Vina's comment, I also like, since I've been struggling reading so much recently, have been trying to try other things and have a balance with us. She's definitely always going to be my number one.
Yeah. This is hilarious to me that the homeschool kids judge your taste. I think I just have always been the type of person where if I like it, I don't care if you like it or not because I like it. Like I'm having fun. I'm not going to stop having fun because you wouldn't have fun and you think it's weird that I'm having fun because I'm having fun. So I don't care what you think.
I agree. Even if someone had said something to me in high school, I've just been like, all right.
Right. I just don't think it would have bothered me. Maybe if, it reached certain levels of bullying, then yeah, because I didn't go through that, so I can't tell how I would react. But just like a one-off comment, I don't care if you don't like it. I love that Monet was like
Graphic nerd.
I was also pretty like sassy in high school. I probably would have said something really mean.
Of course, they're not going to be like, sure, you skipped class to read a book.
Hi. Yeah. That is exciting. Brand new books are awesome. So, do you think that being a reader is trendy on social media because it's trendy on social media? Is it directly influencing people to make their identity about books, particularly maybe 16, 17, 18-year-olds? I think that they might be getting not they might be getting a lot of the criticism for this, because at that age you are trying to figure out who you are and what you like and what you're doing and how people are going to perceive you. And if you get all of this fulfillment, I guess, and all of this positive feedback and these comments on your reading, then I can understand like being really obsessed with kind of that aspect of it, the social media aspect of it. But do you think that because it's popular right now on social media, do you think that people are, one, maybe reading when they wouldn't have, and two, maybe making their entire personality about their book content?
I'd say just as much as any other fad that goes around. I feel like at that age, you're so, like you said, you're so malleable. You're always trying to figure out like who you are and what you're interested in. And when everyone else is into something, it's easy to just kind of like absorb that and become part of it. The same way, like, yeah, Twilight was huge when I was in high school and everyone made that their personality. I think it's kind of the same thing where you see these massive YouTubers that have millions of followers that are like, here's my monthly wrap up. They're like, well, she's doing it. Obviously, I'm going to do it. And I think it's the same thing as any other phase. I mean, I'm glad that they're reading instead of into something else. That's super cool. Like all the weird dances and stuff that put people in danger, like cinnamon challenges and stuff instead of.
What a time. Instead of eating Tide Pods is always cool.
Yeah. See?
We want to encourage that. But yeah, I don't see, I guess I don't follow people in that like age range. And I also am not booktok, which may have younger people. But I just like Robin said, I mean, a trend, of course, it's going to be like, oh, I want to do this. And I think it's a better trend than most. And just like you said, like, I'm glad you're reading, even if it's just for the moment or because you saw somebody else doing it, because maybe these are people who are in, just a little bit later in life who are going to discover they love reading. So we love to see it. Now, yeah, I'll save that for later. I was going to say other people, but in the youth, yes, it's wonderful. They're just doing what they see people they like doing, and there are a lot worse things they could be participating in.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question a lot and actually thought about it in a little bit of a different way. I feel like it depends on where you are situated in the bookish community. So like booktok feels like where it's maybe skews a little bit younger, and I'm not on booktok. I'm sorry. I just don't have the energy to keep up with as much content that comes through that cycle. It moves too fast for me. So I feel like there are definitely spaces where your personality might thrive maybe differently or better, or it might go over easier, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so I think booktok seems to be where the teens and young 20 folks are situated. And I'm primarily on YouTube. Like I watch YouTube and Twitter and, participate in bookstagram. And I feel like that could be a little bit older 20s, maybe some 30s and older readers. And so it just feels like I would have to live through y'all or someone else telling me what's happening on booktok, because it totally is.
I can't keep up. And a lot of because I feel like a lot of booktok is a lot of different genres, but very romance heavy. And like Vina, the ones I've seen are usually more in younger 20s, and it's like an aesthetic, but like they get really into, romance and not cosplaying, but like every man that has a nice voice being like, yes, you need to be the audio narrator of this. But yeah, it's interesting. But I've seen with booktok, I'm just like, that's not my scene.
Yeah. I mean, I follow a lot of great people on booktok of all ages, all genres, all, they're there, but at the same time, it's not where I go for my bookish content. It just isn't. As much as it's in my feed and as many videos as I like and enjoy, and even books that I pick up, it's not where my book community is.
Yeah, I'm not on booktok either, so I can't really speak to what is on there.
I'm a local.
I also feel like I am not the one that like knows what's cool at this point. I don't have kids. I'm in my mid 30s. Like I don't know what's cool, so like this is all kind of conjecture. No one's coming to me for what's like cool and hip.
Yeah. But I think this is because I was a teenager eons ago, but there wasn't, I don't think Kindle Unlimited existed.
Right.
Or I was just getting physical books from the library. So it definitely is making it more accessible. And then I know when COVID and the lockdown happened, and we saw like the explosion of booktok and people really not having many options of stuff to do.
Right.
So I mean, we're still pretty niche, but I'm glad that more people are reading.
Yeah. I feel like not only are the books more accessible through subscriptions like this, and even just ebooks from your library are more accessible than they ever have been before, right? Ever before, regardless of your own level of accessibility because of where you live, etc., it's still like the most we've ever had. But also on top of that, just seeing people talk about books and finding out about books in another way besides just seeing it in front of your face on a shelf is like a whole new world. Like, child me could have never imagined this type of book community where you can hear about books and get books on your phone and on your Kindle. Like, iPhones didn't even exist.
Yeah. Well, and not just like the accessibility, but the cost accessibility too. I mean, if you live in a rural area with a limited library,
Right.
you only had access to so many books if you didn't
Right.
have the
Right.
extra
I had read
information
every
in the
single
book.
book that I had access to.
Yeah. And so I think that as well as the actual number of books that are accessible is that financial element of it as well.
I did also want to add, I know on Bookstagram and YouTube, and then we're going to let Linnell talk. People make like their whole wardrobe and their house and their channel, like it's all the aesthetic of the books that they read, and it's fascinating. I kind of like it. Like, I'm like, oh, that's cool, but I could never be that dedicated.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that I feel like we go through these cycles of like how social media is presenting the reading community, right? When I came in, it was like blogging. So I'm like, I'm really aging myself here.
You still are blogging.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm old and I don't want to change. But then it was YouTube and Twitter, book Twitter, around the same time. And then I remember when Bookstagram blew up, and that was like aesthetics, right? Like people had certain, the page looked a certain way. And then there was something in between. I don't know if it was Vine and Tumblr, then Snapchat, then TikTok. But TikTok feels different for me because it seems that you have access to more media that you can combine. And if you want to stay in front of people, and I think this appeal to be like connected to thousands of people at the same time, people have to know really quickly what they're going to get when they come to your page. And so the algorithm is really trying to distill down how to present you to other people. So you have to kind of engage with making things your personality, right? Like if you don't like the Barbie phase, there's going to be someone that you can find really quickly that will be opposed to that on TikTok. Whereas I think maybe on Instagram and book Twitter, it would take you a little bit longer to filter through those things. So I think TikTok makes it super easy to feed into making things your aesthetic, making it your personality.
Yeah.
Whether it's healthy or not, we could probably debate that.
Yeah. And TikTok makes it where whatever you're consuming, you can so easily get more of it, even if it's just a conversation. Like, you see this part of the conversation, and then it shows you like, you don't know these people, you don't follow them, but you're seeing the connected videos because of the way it is. And that's just not, it's a thing on Twitter to a certain extent, and it's a thing on TikTok, but on like YouTube and Instagram is not really a thing. You only see that if you're already watching that person, basically. As far as Leah talking about people reading more diversely, I mean, yeah, don't we all? I think that way though can kind of just be frustrating, and the best thing that you can do is find the people who do read diversely, follow them, get your recommendations from them, read those authors, support people who do it and advocate for it. But I know there are so many people, like, they don't care. They're not going to. And I am not going to waste my time viewing their content and being like, I wish you would read.
And like you guys were saying about the algorithm kind of like feeding into things, the more that you're doing it, the more the algorithm is going to keep feeding that content to you. So as these TikTokers are recommending all of these straight white books, you're going to keep getting recommended straight white. And you just end up getting down into this cycle. And it's is hard.
I
And then you
know,
put it out
like,
there, and
my
it's
BookTok feed is
popular on BookTok. And
yeah,
it's the same book.
you're
So of
right.
course it's like what's in the front, what's on like big displays. It's easy to grab if you
Right.
like don't know what your reading tastes are. So it just is like a cycle.
Yeah, definitely lifestyle content. I know like my BookTok page is really diverse, but the ones that make it to the Barnes and Noble BookTok table are never, well, I don't want to say never, but realistically are probably never going to be that diverse.
It took forever, even for like my Kindle homepage, to get to a point where I was just like, why are these books being recommended to me? And like finally now it's like actually but like
Right.
you really have to fight that algorithm. It's kind of crazy.
And I think that you're right, and we are going to get into that. So next, if being a reader is a core part of your identity, which I think we've kind of established it is that self-fulfilling? I think we've all kind of said for us it is. Or do you need people to recognize you as a reader? I do think that some of the social media, some of the online book community, they need to be recognized not only as a reader but as a good reader. Whatever their type of reading is needs to be like amongst the elite. It needs to be better than other types of reading. If that is they read 12 books a year, then it's because they take their time. They they go in depth with it. If they read 400 books a year, then they're a really fast reader. If they listen to audiobooks all day, then like that needs to be valued. And if you don't listen to audiobooks, which I don't, but I don't care. But if you don't listen to audiobooks, then you need to spend the time to tell people you don't listen to audiobooks, and that's why you only, whatever it is, like you need to be valued for it, and you need to be valued for it at the expense of people who don't do it like you. And that I think it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of like feeding back into like where you are, and maybe it's a little bit of giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like you're trying to find your community. So
Right.
you're saying these things to signal other readers so you can find people who read like you. But it's like, really? Okay, you read classics, good for you.
Right.
You read what is it, literary fiction versus romance. It feels like it's the constant push and pull. But even within subgenres, I think like romance gets dinged all over the time. What type of romance you read, and how often, and which authors are you reading. You're not a real romance reader if you haven't read fill in the blank. So I think it's a little bit of trying to establish a hierarchy and certain characteristics. Like if you read a high volume, I mean, for me, honestly, I will put this out there. For me, I wanted to be in the 100 books read club. Like from day one, I was like, I want to understand how people do it, because it just felt like a myth, like a legend almost. And then once I did it, I was like, oh, I just need to like make these adjustments, and it doesn't feel like anything other than picking up and reading all weekend for me, right? So I want to say a little bit of it might be that you're trying to find other people, and you're just people who do that are just doing it really clumsily, if that's a word. But then I also think there are some mean people, and their orientation to life is to say that they're better than you, and that's how it manifests.
Yeah. I think that sometimes it's even, well, the only people who like those books are the ones who aren't really deep in the genre or whatever. It's like, oh, yeah, you like the most popular, but that's all you like. And like, I don't like the most popular. Again, like that's not me. But I don't think that you are not a real romance reader if your go-to authors are Colleen Hoover and Emily Henry and 50 Shades of Grey. I forget her name, but like if you read romance, then you can consider yourself a romance reader. I'm not over here trying to define what it takes to really be a romance reader. I like indie romance. I like diverse romance. So that's what I read. That's what I recommend, and that's who I follow. But that's just me controlling what I do, not really what anyone else does.
I think you see it in the fantasy genre too. You get these people who are like, well, if you haven't read The
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings, you're not a real fantasy reader yet because that's the classic. And that,
Right.
so I think you see it everywhere. And I also think like if you're making bookish videos, it kind of depends on why you started that channel, right? Like whether
Yeah.
or not you steer into that. Like I don't care if anyone watches my channel or not. I started that channel because I wanted to meet other readers.
Mhm.
I don't have those people in real life. So if people think my reading is crappy or whatever, I don't care. Like you can
Yeah.
think whatever you want about my reading. And so I think part of it is like, what did you go into this for? Were you trying to get a big audience? Is that why you're reading the big authors or not the big authors? What was your goal going into this on
Yeah.
the social media side? So
And
I
if
think
you are trying to get a big audience, good. Go
yeah,
for
go
it.
for it. But I think it dictates how you see
Mhm.
reading.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, to your point of that's how, depending on how you want to grow your channel or what is the point of your social media or whatever. Because I mean, I've been there where I'm like, okay, I need to read these things because these are what's popular, or this is what's going to get a lot of engagement, or people,
Yeah.
even if I know I'm probably not going to like it, I'm going to read this because I know that it'll get me views. And that became exhausting.
Mhm.
um and so now I am not reading as much. And so I'm like, I need to enjoy what I'm reading. So I've been DNFing. I'm hoping to make Heather proud. I've been DNFing books left and right. Page 1, page 5. I'm like, not feeling it. But I don't need, anyone to recognize it. Just to a comment earlier. Yeah, I love when people know that I'm a reader and, you ask like what kind of books I like, or a wish list or a gift card or something to a bookstore, but that's it. I don't need to be like validated by anyone. If you don't think what I like, or if I said these are my top 10 fantasy series and you don't think, I don't care. You can
Right.
keep I read the first Fellowship of the Ring and that thing is dry. Okay.
Plus, I'm sorry, we have the movies.
They're
Yeah,
so
why?
good. And so I just keep rewatching the movies. And if that doesn't make me a fantasy fan, actually you're incorrect, because like
Right.
you read one romance book a year, then you're a romance. Like you're a
Yeah.
reader. I hate and it's also, I've done it to myself where I'm like, oh, I'm not reading as much, and like questioning myself is like, yeah, can I still be really in like the book community? That's so, people read 300, people read 150, 25. If
Yeah.
you like to read, you like to read, and
Right.
that's it. But yeah, the people who have like, you need to do this or read this to qualify as such, just like, boo, get out of here, tomato,
Yeah.
tomato, tomato.
And when it comes to reading a ton of books, I think that maybe this isn't true for everyone, but this is definitely kind of how I've always been, and the feeling I've gotten from other people who read hundreds of books a year is that they're not particularly trying to. That is just how their reading is, whether you're seeing it or not. It's not like they're only picking up short books in the hopes of getting their numbers higher. Like whatever it is, whether they read short books or romance or comics or children's book or what have you, or audiobooks, whatever is helping their consumption number be higher. They're not doing it on purpose for the numbers. The numbers reflect their reality. Their reality is not based on the numbers. Like I can read hundreds of books a year, and that's just my reading. And if I read 10 books in a week, which is not a typical week for me, or I read one, but I enjoyed those books the same, I do not care which number I hit. I only care about, did I enjoy my reading? That's it.
Yeah, I think it's I don't think we talk about enough when you tie your reading to your content. Like sometimes those two things don't
Yeah.
coexist really well, right? Because it puts additional pressure on you, that really sometimes I think takes away from the reading experience, because then you're forcing yourself to read things that you don't enjoy rather than just being able to experience it. For me, initially, when my reading consumption was going up slowly, it was because I felt it was tied to content. I felt like if I read more, I can have more content. And then it was just like, I don't even enjoy the content that I'm making.
Yeah.
So who cares? And like, I would have like really good months in terms of engagement or new follows. And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people would just stop on following me and I couldn't figure out why. And then it was just like going back to Robin's point, like, what is the point of this the reason that I started this account? And it's because I wanted to just be able to talk about the books that I enjoyed. And so once I started to have that frame of reference, anytime I see myself putting a lot of undue pressure in terms of content, I take a step back. I'm like, this is not worth it. I'm not, even if I was getting paid for this, it should not come at the expense of me enjoying reading. And that's what what I do to keep myself honest, because all of this other stuff is not the trolls, you aren't a romance reader, all of those things can't come to the expense of wanting to read and doing this type of stuff, being able to talk just openly about the reading experience. So I think for me initially, the high number came because I was trying to drive content, but now I've kind of like been able to find the balance. And I also batch create stuff. So by the time you see it on any of my timelines, it's like 2 months ago, a thought from 2 months ago, and sometimes there are things that pop into my mind and I adjust, but for the most part, it's not something like that happened this week.
Right. So. Yeah, I feel completely the same about all of that. Not only is my content, pretty much already planned out, but I've mentioned this many times, I refuse to make content that requires my reading to be content focused. That's why I make the videos that I make. And I make ones that I enjoy, and that's it. But I will either never have required reading for content, or I will do it, really spaced out, or if I always have the option to quit. I am never forcing myself through a book in the name of a video. Never.
I think sometimes we forget too that everyone's free time is completely different. Like I don't have kids. So like my free time when I'm not working is my time. And so I have far more time than say Heather does. I don't have to put my kids to sleep. I don't have to make sure they're fed. I don't have any of that. And so my downtime is already increased. Plus I work from home. So my downtime is even higher. And then on top of that, you also have to take into consideration, I think that like for people who are neurodiverse, our brains work at like a ridiculously fast pace. And so I constantly have audiobooks on at like 2.5 times speed because I just need the constant like feedback in order to quiet myself down. And so I go through books at ridiculous rates. And it's not because I'm not taking my time or not enjoying them. It's just that I need to have that noise in my head so I don't go completely crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't have kids. I collect stray cats in my neighborhood, so that's about like the most enjoyment I'll get like outside of work. But I also work from home now, and so for me, I don't have that commute anymore where I would pop on an audiobook. But at the end of the day, like I've spent all of this time doing things for other people. The free time that I have, I want to do for me, like. And to me, my natural inclination will be to go pick up a book or, like maybe just buy some books. So it makes me happy in the moment. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think when I think of free time, it often always includes something related to reading, whether that's reorganizing my bookcases for the millionth time, buying more books on Holland Books. It's something is tied to reading in my free time. And my friends make fun of me on the weekends. They'll text me, I know you're reading, but can I call you or can I pop over? Like they know they need to do that disclaimer because I'm reading. And for the most part, they try to respect those boundaries because on the weekends, I really just want to read, hence the name. But you know what I mean? And every now and again, I'll do something different, but I need at least one day where reading is centered and it just feels like it's always a reset. I mean, it also makes me spend money, but it just makes me feel like I can have a stressful work week and know that on Saturday, all I'm going to do is read. Like that's something it's a treat. It's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because that used to be, or my reading has gone up and down. But when I started my channel, I wasn't working. And so for 3 years I had where YouTube was my only thing that I had to do. But now that we've moved, I have a full-time day job that's very like stressful, and I can't listen to like audiobooks while I'm doing other things. So I'm like talking on the phone all the time. I get off and I want to read, but like I can't focus. Even I've been struggling. So, and it makes me so sad because I just go, sometimes I just look at my shelves. I'm like, I know you're good. I just can't read you right now. Or longer books because I have so many. And like I've been doing better recently doing like a hybrid reading, but sometimes I literally will like read and I just keep reading the same sentence over and over. So it's been sad on like, but you know, that's some people or may struggle like that or have more responsibilities, or everyone's time is different. So when people are like, oh my God, you must be lying. It's like, you don't know what they're doing with their personal time. They may never sleep.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's, I will say this, it didn't come naturally for me. It's something that like my therapist and I worked through where I needed like a clear cutoff time, right? Or else I will stay in work mode. And so for me, if I don't have like something planned or thinking about in terms of reading, I will continue to think about work. So it's like I need to have like something to disconnect to go to, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, for a long time with work, you know, I would be in the office from 8:30 to 7, come home and then work to 10.
Yeah.
I don't do that now, you know. Now it's like, oh, 5:30, let me log off my laptop, close my office, go to the couch, turn on booktube for an hour, collect all of the books that y'all have recommended me, and then decide what will we be reading tonight or tomorrow. So
Right. Yeah. I love that.
I do the same thing over my lunch because I was so bad about taking lunches once I started working from home. And so that's kind of been like my thing is like I pick up my Kindle, I make myself go downstairs, like separate that time. And so it makes it easier to have that separation between work and personal life. So
Yeah.
I definitely feel that.
I know for me, if I feel like scrolling on TikTok for 3 hours instead of reading a book, I do. But I hate being alone with my thoughts. So I'm like, well, let me just read till I'm ready to fall asleep or whatever. And like my life is genuinely better because I have books. And honestly, the book community too, especially through all the stuff with COVID. This has been just, a great addition to my life. It really truly has. But like reading makes me feel better, and if it didn't, I probably wouldn't do it as much. um, I know we all established that we have been readers since children, so I'm curious from the chat, do you think that having like being a reader, being part of your self-worth, do you think that that is more specific to people who have been readers through their formative years and, have identified themselves as that? If you became a reader as an adult, I'm curious if maybe it's not as much a core part of your identity or not. Um, I know for this comment, I don't feel pressure to read more during readathons. Um I would probably do maybe 5 or so readathons a year, maybe a little more. I'm trying to keep track. I don't participate in a lot. I don't. And even like Black Aweenathon, is focused on Black authors and crime fiction basically. I'm still reading romance crime by Black authors. Like, I am not really going outside of my comfort zone because I know, like, what's the point of reading a book that's not really my thing for a readathon? Like, I am twisting and turning prompts to fit what I want to read. And also, I cannot do like a month-long readathon or anything like Black Aweenathon, Bookopoly, Blackathon. Um, I participate for like a week and that, or maybe even like 4 or 5 days. And I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I am not good at. I want to because there's so many and so many like based on fun things and fun setups and teams and all of this, but I am such a mood reader that there's been a couple times I've been like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this and like I'm gonna make a TBR and I read nothing. So I'm always like, I love this for you, but it's not for me.
I used to put a lot of pressure on myself to read more of them. But like Heather said, like after a while, I'm just like, this is my TBR. If anything fits, okay. Like, and like I do, if those like month-long ones happen, I will pick extra books to fit that. Like you said during Black Readathon, I always put like extra books on that TBR to kind of like fit that theme. But I'm not reading any more than I normally do. I'm just kind of tailoring the vibe of that TBR a little bit more. Because yeah, it gets to be a lot of pressure, especially with how many there are now. Where it used to be, you know, you would have like 4 a year or something like that. And now there are dozens every single month.
Continuously. Yeah.
So it's like you can't do them all.
Yeah, I am probably, don't ask me to do a readathon. It's just not happening. And I love the concept of them, but it just, this is probably going to sound mean, but it feels like a punishment for me. Like it feels like required reading because I have to figure out what fits the prompts, and someone is like, oh, this doesn't fit the prompt, and I'm going to hyper focus on that. And it just feels like a punishment for me. So I will help you promote one, but I can't. But I feel like the concept of them makes so much sense, and I think it helps other readers, and I get the value in them. It's just not for me. And I've tried multiple. The short ones, the one that is like my nemesis. This is totally getting off topic. It's the 24-hour readathons, right? Because I want to do them. Like I want to do one to say I've done it. Oh my gosh. But it's just like, I'm going to take a nap and it's going to start as soon as it starts. And then I'm going to be like, well, when do I start my 24 hours? Do I start it when I wake up or when I start the first book? Yep. This is my dilemma with all readathons. So I just don't do them, but I will root for you.
Yeah, I like the ones that are like, oh, just read romance books or just read books for a weekend or whatever. Like those ones, I will like watch the lives and stuff like that and like participate.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's like a bunch of challenges and stuff, I'm less likely to actually do it because I'm just like taking that challenge and I'm like, this is a shade of blue. It's close enough to green, right?
I like all the like sprints and lives that come from them, even though I'm lurking. But I'm like, oh yes, sprints. I needed this. And sometimes I'm not even reading. I'm maybe doing something else. But I just like love the concept of sprints in general because it's like people having conversations and a little break. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. But yeah, it's too much. It's too much for me for the readathons. But I love them for everyone else.
I definitely understand very much the like it feels like assigned reading. I try not to do it if that's how I'm feeling. And I also try to either give myself multiple options. I always have the option to DNF. In fact, I plan on DNFing. I'm like, okay, at least some of these are gonna be DNFs. I don't know which ones. And yeah, I always try to like limit my participation to my attention span. Once I'm done, I'm like, oh well, ending the vlog here.
Oh, I like that about the bending the 24 because I'm always like, I can't do it. I'm tired. But
I will
That's
absolutely
smart.
sleep. That is non-negotiable.
I'm not lasting more than a couple hours. Let's be real, because I'm just gonna get distracted. I just can't. The best. I need more of them on the YouTube.
This my next thing is, do you think there is a stigma around being a reader? I think that it kind of just depends on who you're talking to. I know, again, for me, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like if people, I don't know. if people cannot understand that my taste is different from theirs, then I don't value their opinion anyways. So it doesn't bother me because I just think that they're baseless, like, in their stance. I'm like, "Okay, but, like, no." So I just don't value their opinion even when I don't know. I guess that's when it comes down to it. I'm like, "I would never leave this comment. I would never,
Oh,
go out of my way to say that.
the
So I
comment.
don't value that you did it. I'm just gonna ignore you."
I think there's less there. I don't see as much stigma for reading in general, just more to like what you were saying. But it's always like, oh, well, if you just read fantasy, oh, you don't read real books. You're not reading like historical fiction or literary fiction, or there's always a stigma against romance, even though it makes the books like high selling genre. It's like, oh, you read those kind of books. So I feel like it's, which is sad, it's less stigma from people who don't read to readers, and more readers to other readers about what they read, or how they read it, because we keep having those dumb conversations. But yeah, that's my thought. And same, it's like, well, you can enjoy your lit fic, your 50th lit fic book over there. I'm gonna read this fantasy. I might reread it. Mind your business.
I agree with Monet that there's more, I think, stigma in like internalized than there is externalized. I think it's way more about people in the community judging about what subgenres you read, what authors you read, all of that, versus like external stuff. And I think it also kind of depends on age, because like I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, if you don't like me, I don't really care. Like I
I
don't
don't know you.
feed you, I don't know you. Like, I don't care.
Block.
Yeah, exactly. The block button's right there. I can unfollow you, block you. And so it doesn't bother me. I think it exists internally, but if it happens, I'm just like, whatever, and move on with my life.
It's like, go watch somebody else, because
Exactly.
I'm not gonna change because of your comment.
So many channels out there that you can watch. Like, you don't need to sit here on mine. You don't need to let me know. It's cool.
Yeah, exit.
Yeah, I definitely think it was maybe the tail end of COVID when we were in isolation. I was like, trying to figure out because I was falling out of love with contemporary romance. And I think I want to say around then, that's when I got into paranormal romance. And I remember distinctly saying, I don't read that. What do you mean people are having sex with monsters? Like it just did not click for me. And so like my standpoint now is I don't currently read it. Right. And so like I try to give myself a little bit more wiggle room, not to be like, I don't read certain things or what have you. Because there was a moment, I was only reading dark romance and I could not explain to you why it was hitting the right things in my brain. And I was like, does it have kidnapping in it? I, I was just having a moment, and, can I have this conversation, with other people who are not readers? Probably not, because there's this disconnect of it's fiction. And I understand that there's certain things that even in fiction shouldn't happen, right? Like, I'm not that loose, you know what I mean?
We get it.
Right. And so I think there is definitely a lot of stigma about what you read, and you have to do a lot of like disclaimers or qualifiers of, I'm reading this to feel this, whatever, or I'm reading this to understand something, or I'm reading it just for pure pleasure. But then, we all have these different, lines in the sand that we won't cross. And so it's hard to communicate that. So I think it comes up in, well, oh, you're reading this, so then that means you're okay with this, or you read this and your literacy and comprehension is this, which I often feel like comes along with romance. And I was just like, dude, I mean, it's fiction. I don't have to learn something, okay? Or hello, I am learning something, because, even for the most part, it's like a very human experience to fall in some type of emotional connection with someone, right? Well, however that looks like. But I will say, reading at the volume that I do read, it's helped me give language to things that I might not normally think about. And I'm happy that I haven't let the folks who have those kind of ideals about, oh, you read this, so that means fill in the blank. it's given me a lot more language about like being a better ally or not using certain phrases. It's because I read it, right? And I don't think I would have done that if I stayed in this really tight bubble of my reading preferences. Like reading wide helps me learn different things or imagine a different world outside of the very suburban lifestyle that I have right now, right? Where it's very privileged. And so I get to read certain things and have a better understanding of, ooh, don't say that, or this is why you shouldn't say that, or if you do this, this is the potential ramifications. So I think like people who stay in that tight box, there might be some missed opportunities too, because, you know, it's fiction, low stakes, minus your credit card bills, perhaps. But it's low stakes. So I think like if you're limiting yourself, you're missing out. So,
Yeah. And I also think that like none of us are even talking about like reading diversely because we all do. Like we all believe that you should. And whatever you want to read, there are authors writing it that are not just white and straight and cis and able-bodied and all of the things. There are authors writing that genre, that subgenre, that trope, whatever you like, they're out there writing it. But like if you don't understand why I might like this dark content but not this other one, that's okay. It's okay. I know like some people, and they're welcome to this opinion, you know, they really don't think that dubious consent or non-consent should be in a romance. Like they think that because that's not romantic, because that's not how you should be treated, that if it's in your book, you shouldn't call it a romance. And I disagree with that. But I don't spend my time arguing with them online. Like they're welcome to their opinion, and I'm still going to read what I like, and I'm also going to make sure I'm letting you know what content warnings are. So if you don't want to read that, you have the option to avoid it and not be harmed by it, right? But I think that you all have said a lot about how we as readers do we're kind of the problem a lot of times for other readers. And I know Beth said about a lot of the times it's male viewers or male authors, but I have to say for a genre that's heavily skewed towards white women, they sure do create their own toxicity.
And the same with Monet, and like the fandoms can just sometimes, you know, if you read one of the classics or the ones that you have to, and then you don't love it or have a different opinion, then it's like, well, you obviously didn't read it right. You didn't interpret it. It's like, what do you? I didn't like a book. It's fine.
That's fine.
It happens in romance too, where like a book will blow up as like, how dare you not like this, or how dare you like it? It goes both ways, right?
Yeah,
like no matter how you fell on that spectrum, there's someone that's like, absolutely not. But I think like that whenever we talk about this, where it's like this stigma around, we have to remember that like everyone, you don't have to watch these people. If you don't, there's no reason to have this conversation. If you feel that dubious consent shouldn't be in books, don't watch the channel. If they're recommending a dub comp, you don't have to watch it. There's this weird like parasocial thing that happens on social media where people think like, I have to comment on this. I have to tell them. It's like, you can move on. There is endless content for you.
They're trying to save you. They're saying, I'm trying to lead you to the light. You're wrong. Let me direct you to the right place.
Like, we don't need this.
you know what I always find funny about those comments though is when they're like, oh, you're recommending this and it has this in it, and then you go back to their reading preferences and there are tons of examples where they're like, you know, hammering you on this one book, and they have read and enjoyed and promoted books that have that same thing in it. So it's just like, oh, so you just have time to tell me what not to do or not to read, because it doesn't show up in a way that you're comfortable, right? Or you deem appropriate. So I think that's the part that I'm like, okay, I'm not arguing with you because clearly you're telling on yourself. So
Right. Do you think readers are trying to gatekeep the online book community, whether that's from new readers, new content creators, people who seemingly gain traction and get a huge following out of nowhere, and or people who are reading the books that you read years ago or that were popular years ago or are only the most popular, or they don't know all the things and you're just like, how dare you not know this? How dare you be a beginner?
Why are you so loud? Please.
and wrong. Loud and wrong.
I mean, yes. I have found myself not being gatekeeping, but judgy. I'm gonna admit, when I'm on YouTube and somebody just like pops up and I'm like, I've never seen, and obviously I can't see everybody, right? But like usually like larger creators you know of, and I'm like, 600,000 views on this video of like, oh my God, this is how I read 10 books in a month. And I'm like, who are you? And then you go, and they were mostly lifestyle, not coming into reading. That's I'm judgy about that. I'm a little bit salty, but I'm like, girl, we've been here.
And it's always like Emily Henry, and they're like, have you read this?
Yes.
Like, yeah, 4 years ago.
We've been in the trenches and they built a huge following off whatever else. And now reading is cool, which I'm glad. But now and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever.
I definitely agree. I have definitely done that where it's like you see this lifestyle blogger or whatever that's just like millions of followers, and she's like, have you read Colleen Hoover? Have you read Jennifer L. Armentrout? And
oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
for real?
Like Mass. This act, I'm like, what?
Oh my God, the number of people. I also do planner stuff as well, and the number of people in the planner community picking up ACOTAR and like promoting it's honestly wild.
Gem.
Wow.
But I think, like Vita said about Romancelandia, I think there's another layer of it about gatekeeping that isn't that. That's, well, you as a new reader who don't have 600,000 viewers or whatever, why are you reading this book when we have this indie book? I read this many indie romances, or I read this many whatever it is. I get this many arcs. I get this many whatever it is. And they're like, well, if you're not there, you're not really part of the community yet. Yeah. And so I think there is that aspect, or like if you're not part of this certain clique, or if you're not talking to these people, if you're not making this type of content. And I think that's a different type of gatekeeping that definitely happens. I don't know if it's as much, but I know I definitely have that feeling of, why are you getting so many views for books that people have already read? It's not fair.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there are some things we should gatekeep on, because then if we don't, then it gets really murky. And the thing that comes to mind is Black romance, how people try to, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate on this, but like, I just feel like we know what it is. Stop trying to rebrand it to something that it isn't.
Sure.
And for the creators and authors who are really like, this is all I write and read, I absolutely feel that they should gatekeep. And I think when folks are trying to enter in, it's almost like decorum, kind of like this subgenre has history and it was created for a reason. And there are other subgenres that you can read, right? If that is something that you prefer. So I feel like Black romance is the one thing that I'm like, that's the only thing that I can foreseeably see that people need to gatekeep. Everything else, I'm like, really, y'all? I can't trust you. You're recommending whatever. But then my next natural thought is, oh, well, they're just not for me. And I move on to someone else. I don't feel like I have to teach them anyone, because hopefully somebody else in the comments will feel called to do that, right? That's not like my ministry. But I think for me, the only one thing to gatekeep, hands down,
is Black romance.
No wavering, is Black romance.
The conversations that come around it, I feel like it's every couple of weeks there's somebody with some hot take about like, I don't want to read struggle love or these ghetto love romances. And I'm like, go away.
Yeah,
Just what?
exactly. Go away. No one
Like, if you don't
cares.
like tropes or a way of a character in one book, that's fine. And so you can go look for other ones, or like if there's rom-coms that are Black romances. There are more serious ones. There's dark, like, I just be quiet. And I'm like, are you saying this because you believe it, or because you know that it's a topic that's going to get you a lot of interaction because it's tired?
Yeah, and I think that's partly it. And so I don't, I don't participate in a lot of anything anymore. But I definitely think now, being in the book community since 2017ish, it feels like there are certain conversations that people definitely start in the hopes of causing engagement, right? And I think that conversation is one of them. And I also think it's the Colleen Hoovers of the world who don't want to acknowledge, or readers who don't want to acknowledge, like, you can like something and acknowledge that it's problematic. Like, it's okay. These two things can be true, right? And so, or the Allie Hazelwoods. I'm not quite sure what happened where she was like the darling of romance and then everybody just hated her. I mean, I haven't read anything recently from her, so I'm pretty neutral. But same thing with like the Emily Henry's. Her books are not romance. Well, not all of her books are romance, and it's okay. Like, romantic elements, blah blah blah. But I just think like some people just go at it in the hopes of wanting to cause engagement. I just don't understand who has the energy to keep up with the comments, because once it starts, oh my gosh, it could go for days, weeks at a time. I'm like, how is that not making you anxious? Because it's making me anxious, just trying to figure out what is happening, where did it started from. Jess, I know you're not doing community anymore, but I was like, thank God somebody figured this out for us, because Lord Jesus, what is happening again? But this time it's slightly different. But yeah, so I don't know.
I think you make a good point about there are certain things that almost need to be gatekeeped or like explained as you come in. And like Bina said, like there is a definition for interracial romance versus Black love romance. And everyone needs to stop pretending like they are the same. Like they're not. They're two separate things. They have their own meaning. And I think those types of things, like you said, that almost needs to be explained, because having people come in and misrepresent it can be really harmful to an entire community. And so I think that is important. I don't know if I'd call it gatekeeping, but I think it is like, I think it is something that is necessary sometimes, especially when they're white creators coming in with all of their Emily Henry recommendations and then
Yeah.
recommend a Black love romance by a white author.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, like, for me, I always view myself as a guest in the Black romance space. I really do. And I think not only with that, with any form of diverse romance, I advocate for reading diversely. I believe in it. I think that if you don't, I'm probably not going to like be bookish friends with you. Just honestly, probably not. However, if you don't want to on your own, and hearing people explain why it's important and why it's good isn't enough to convince you that it's something you want to do, I don't really think we need you reviewing those books and recommending those books and talking about your point of view on those books, because you're kind of there in bad faith. You're there just so you don't get canceled for all intents and purposes. And like, no. It's good enough to have people who genuinely love it and who will be respectful of it and who understand where it's coming from, whatever it is. They're reading that work in good faith and following those creators in good faith. And like, I'm not going to try and talk you into doing the bare minimum. Like, if you don't see it on your own, then I don't really think that I need to waste my time trying to convince you, because I don't think that you would be a great participant.
Who's calling horror cozy on Twitter? My goodness.
Yeah, I saw that.
Jess, your community, you're supposed to know this.
Twitter has been declining, so I don't be on there. I'm just like, at this point, just delete the app.
Zena can send you all of the details on that particular.
That man has ruined my favorite app. God. But yeah, I can't keep up, and that's a side tangent, but a reason, amongst other reasons, like mentally, that I stopped doing community really as often is because we keep having the same conversations, and I'm like, I'm tired. Like, why is there this thing about like, oh, Black romance or interracial romance? Why are we talking about audiobooks or not reading again? Like, it just kept being, I'm like, I'm tired of y'all are just wanting engagement. This is not real. So I was tired of talking about the same thing, but it's just going to keep happening. We have like quarterly, it's like, okay, consumerism, audiobooks are not reading, Black romance, what is it? And other
Some author did something dumb.
those regular topics. I'm like, yeah, I'm over it.
Yeah. Our next thing is, do you think the hierarchy of readers is a problem? And I think that just like with Black love and interracial or audiobooks or ebooks or physical books, saying something is different does not mean you're saying that it's worse or that it's less than. Saying this word means this and this word means this isn't saying this word is better than this and that's why you can't call that other thing by this. I think that's what some people do, like, feel personally attacked when you won't allow interracial romance to be called Black romance because, well, there's a Black character and I just love seeing Black characters in love. Like, that's great. You're not saying that that book is bad or worse than, or that that relationship is less worthy or any of the things. You're just saying this word means this and this word means this. And we have definitions on purpose so we can tell what you're talking about, what you're recommending. Words mean things so we can communicate. That's it. It's not necessarily a hierarchy thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes what I think might be happening is that there's some unresolved something when someone is trying to rebrand a thing that is hopefully common knowledge. So it is more digestible for them, and they want to make sure that people don't think that they're a bad person or whatever. So it feels like it comes up a lot about in IR specifically that for some reason the Black character can only be loved fully if they have a non-Black love interest. So I feel like this is why folks like try to rebrand Black romance to Black love or whatever the other same race, whatever the other thing was, that one argument. And I think it's just that these two things can be true. Like a Black character or any character of color can be loved fully because it's a fictional world, and in romance it is understood that that's going to happen, right? Like, but to say that it isn't happening in Black romance, to me there's like some underlying things that are not being said, but it's signaling a little bit of, something that you can't work through with strangers. Like, you have to do that on your own, but you have to also be willing. You don't have to, we're all strangers, right? You don't have to be able to listen to what anyone opinion about your reading. But I think when people are correcting you, you've opened that window for some of that conversation. And I think specifically with Black romance, if you are not wanting to have that heat, just leave it alone and read something else. IR has its own function and niches and readership, right? Stay over there. Have your comments there and leave Black romance alone. But this also goes back to what we talked about earlier, where why does it have to come at the expense of Black romance, right? Like, and I feel like I've just like torpedo the conversation into this, but it's like one of the things that I really want to understand, like, what is the beef with Black romance? Because I feel like it just is minding its own business and providing space and experiences for the readers who want to read it. And if you don't want to read it, just don't read it and don't say anything about it, right? And so I think the hierarchy there is situational to prop yourself up without saying the, like, I think I'm better than you because I have this relatability factor, which is another thing I think, like, some unsaid words when we say relatability, right? So that's how I feel about that situation. I don't know if any of that made sense, though.
It absolutely did, and it was really well said. I do think, like Monet was saying, sometimes she doesn't know the terms and stuff because she's not around. And I think it's just so simple. If you say the wrong thing and someone's like, that's not it, and then you fix it. You don't have like a whole argument about how, well, my book is just as valid, so I can call it whatever I want.
But then some people aren't always kind maybe in their delivery. I think a downside of being on the internet, which I have experienced, is people lack good faith or give you space if you were missing out and terminology has changed, or some people learned this author has done something terrible, and you're just like, oh, I picked up this book from the bookstore, and it's like, oh my God, how could you? And now you must hate all these people and it's like, okay, I'm just learning this information. I'm so sorry. I just wish, and obviously it's harder for like nuance and conversations on some platforms more than others. Obviously YouTube is very like, you leave a comment, that person might respond. I think something like TikTok and Twitter are more like easily more conversational, but but like Monet is saying, and I'm online, but sometimes I'm not always in a bookish space. I might just be like, I'm watching videos about The Sims, so I have no idea what's going on over here, and then come back and I'm like, wait, why do we hate this person? What happened?
Yeah. And that is part of having a good community, where if you don't know someone, you already have all these relationships for people to be like, oh, well, here's what happened. Know where you're coming from. Know that you're acting in good faith. And, they know you. They know whether this is something that you just never care about because you don't care about those people, or if they just know, okay, you didn't see it, or even the type of people that are like, hey, here's the information, do with it what you will. If you disagree with me, that's okay. Like that, having people to be like, hey, I don't know if you know, it's really, really helpful and a great part of the community. And it's a sign that they trust you and care about you enough to think that you will receive their information well and not, go crying about how you were cyberbullied in the DMs.
I just did that whole Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just did the whole conversation about how sometimes I think readers want to feel like they know and that they have their, like, my opinion on this should really matter. And sometimes they often overstep, where it's like they're commenting on identities and things that they shouldn't have an opinion on. Your opinion, in all honesty, doesn't matter. And they're trying to be sound knowledgeable, and they're trying to make it seem like I am an ally. I am here for support, when all they're doing is overstepping their opinion over everyone else that is trying to tell you what this is, what this means, how valid this thing is. And I almost sometimes think that it is I know, look how much work I did, where it's like all you needed to do was someone told you that you were wrong. And just say, okay, I was wrong. Like that's all it was. You didn't need to explain your opinion. You didn't need to explain why you chose that instead of something else, when it's not your place. And this is for everything. I see this all the time in all chronic illness, disability, neurodiverse, where they're just like, this was bad because it's like, I don't care that you think it's bad. It's not your thing to talk about.
No, man, that is awful. But that's what I am just like, come on. Like, it's rare that someone just goes and does something or supports someone because they're like, oh yeah, I want to. This person's
Yeah.
terrible. I want to show this off. Like, I almost, not almost, I love being on the bookish internet. It is most of it has been positive, but I miss knowing less
Mhm.
about authors, about books, about just like when I went to visit Robin, a mutual, couple weeks ago, when we were looking in bookstores, we were like, let's try to find books we haven't heard of, because I just kind of go off what I see everywhere. And so I don't know, did I Google any of those authors? Sure didn't. And so they might pop up and somebody be like such and such, and I'm gonna be like, okay, well, I know that now. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think for the most part, when, and I will say this, I still have a really small, what I consider small. It feels like still manageable. And I've messed up and taken it on the chin as a learning experience. But there have been times where I'm like, oh, you really just want to get me. Like, you want to make me feel like I should have known this and should have done better when it was an actual mistake. And I have like severe anxiety. And so I've been like really trying to figure out, um, how can I learn from this, but also protect myself from that in the future, right? Because it could also happen again. But knowing that, like, if someone is going out of their way to harm or hurt me or make me feel, like stupid, that's not a reflection on me and the community that I have tried to create, and also hopefully make other people feel safe enough to like make mistakes and not be the target of like harassment because they made a mistake. And so like I think there are definitely, parts of the internet where that is, people get like a thrill out of like getting you and seeing that you messed up. But that for me has been far and few, and I'm thankful for that. I think the folks that have been like, oh, you messed up and here's why, we've always taken it to DMs, and it's, you don't get to see it play out online. And I wish more people did that, because it gives the person who made the mistake an opportunity to actually like take a breather and not feel like they potentially have to defend themselves really, against a whole bunch of people. And I think partly that's the issue, right? When you feel like you have to respond to all of these comments telling you you're wrong. And so like I've been thankful whenever I have messed up, we've moved it to DMs, and then it gives me like a day or two to like shake off the anxiety bugs and then come back and say, okay, this is where I messed up. This is what I'm going to do moving forward. And this is how I'm going to do better in the future. And but then there are also creators who are just like, I'm never wrong. And there's that. And
That's
I
true.
don't know what to do with that. So
Yeah. I mean, we're all just doing the best we can, and some people aren't acting in good faith, and some people, you know, like you said, they're never wrong. They're never going to address any of the things. But for most of us, we're doing the best we can, and we're naturally defensive. We're naturally defensive, so it is like the greatest luxury, I guess, you can give someone, to give them a minute. Give them a minute to process it and to think about it and to get past that automatic reaction of defensiveness, and let them work past that, however long it takes, because we process things differently. Some people can make a decision right now, and some people need to think about it. um, and you know, give people a chance. I am always so annoyed when something comes out and people are like, it's been a whole hour. Where is their response? Why have we not heard from them? And it's like, someone taking 2 or 3 days in my mind is just not an unreasonable amount, particularly when they're the character of the day. And it's like, you've got all these people talking about how their book is problematic, their post was problematic, what have you. It doesn't matter what it is. Um, and if they don't take those days, that's where you almost always see that defensive reaction being their response, and it does not go over well pretty
Mm-mm.
much ever.
No, no.
Even as natural as it is, as much as we all feel it, it doesn't go over well. And kind of based on this, how much do you think that popularity factors in to, um, if people do have a large account, does that mean that they need to tie their identity and their sense of self-worth? And if you criticize them for their content or their book, you are automatically criticizing them and who they are as a person. And, or even it's my favorite book. So if you say it's problematic, you must mean that I'm an awful person who can't recognize harm when it's being, perpetuated right in front of me. There's a lot with this. And I think that popularity can kind of increase the intensity of it in a lot of ways. Not only for growing your channel or growing your platform or the amount of criticism or love that a book gets. I know I saw someone, or I've seen several people talk about how Sarah J. Maas and Colleen Hoover, they get so much more hate than the men of their equal status. I'm like, well, like, I don't know, like, sure, you can say misogyny, but that doesn't really change the fact that they are wildly popular. Their books have issues or don't, depending on how you view it, I guess. Um, and people have opinions because it's so popular. And I guarantee you, if Sarah J. Maas had 5,000 reviews on Goodreads, like, she wouldn't have the haters that she does, but that's not her status. Her status is everyone knows who she is because she's one of the best-selling authors of our current time. And so because of that, when people are like, "Hey, she did not do a good job," that's going to be louder because her fan base is rabid.
Mm. Understatement. Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
I think also, I think it kind of does go hand in hand, partly because as you get bigger, your channel gets bigger. It's easy when you make videos, you put your personality out there. You are putting your viewpoints out there, whether you think you are or not. You're letting people know where you stand on a lot of things. And as your channel gets bigger, your reach goes further and further. And so I think it's almost more important for you to be conscious of what you are putting out there because there are more people watching you. And I think from that aspect, it does kind of become more your personality because you need to be more conscious of how many people you are reaching. And I think that's some of the reason why as these people get bigger and bigger, they're getting criticized more and more. You're hitting a massive amount of people, and the diversity of that group at 600,000 followers is so much different than at 600 followers. And so if you are not being conscious of what you are saying and how you are saying it and what you're reading, the community you have created is going to see it and it's going to become aware of it.
Yeah, I think there's a tipping point where it feels like the larger you get, like there's this social contract of authenticity when people are really engaging with you, whether or not, if they think they like you or not, right? So if you're authentic and nothing really changes, someone can start making the case that you're no longer authentic. But it feels like that happens though when you get larger, and then you have to like wade through like what these comments are really saying about you and your recommendations. I think part of the issue is that when a lot of creators get larger, their fan base feels like either they need to insulate them from critique, right? Or they're doing things that are not necessarily a part of the original plan. And so they're making adjustments that don't feel are right or appropriate. In the case of Colleen Hoover, it feels like she is targeting a specific type of readership and is very unapologetic about that, right? And if you don't like that, it feels like it might just be a part of her a part of her, right? Because I remember people were upset about like how her Goodreads giveaways once. She sent like, oh, you didn't get the giveaway or you didn't win the giveaway because you're a loser or something. And people were upset about that a few years ago. And I was just like, it feels like she could just read maybe as a little testy, but her original readership might have got that. But the folks who are coming in don't get the inside joke, right? So it's like managing those two personalities. And I don't feel like you can be your same self when, as you mentioned, Robin, when there are thousands of you, like they're splicing you up and only wanting pieces of you.
Right.
So for me, 3,000 is the sweet spot. I do not want to get more than that because to me, it just does not feel manageable. And I don't want anybody wanting anything from me other than what I'm willing to give you. Don't ask me where I work. Don't ask me about who I'm sleeping with or my preferences in dating. Like some of these things, like I feel like at 2,000 followers feels like innocent, but at 10,000, it feels predatory, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how larger creators or larger authors are managing that because it just feels like, and also the constant request of it. One of the things that I think I've learned as a reviewer is don't ask authors for more books because it's just not you asking. It is you times however many of their readership that you might not also see, right? And then when they put out the book that you've been asking for and it's not quite what you want, then what? You know? So I just think like something happens when you get bigger that I don't know if we have been able to really have the time to figure out how to navigate people having that much access to you at the volume and frequency, and they all want to comment on whether or not you're wearing makeup or if you've gained a little bit of weight or who's not showing up on your feed anymore. Like all of that is happening at such, and thinking about it is actually making me anxious. So someone else jump in because I just don't understand how people are doing it. And it just does not feel fun.
I think it's what you're loved for at a certain size is what everyone is mad at you for once you get too big. And it's also why you can understand why people with really large followings do not address every controversy that comes their way. Because when you have more eyes on you, you have more opinions about you. And there's some people that their critique is legitimate. You could have done that better. Maybe you should address this. But I think a lot of times it gets drowned out in the people that hate you just for existing, who leave comments talking about your hair and your ears and why did you start the book like that? And, you know, all of this that you can understand their policy being no comment. We don't directly address any of the things. Whereas with a smaller author or a smaller creator, you can kind of expect that, hey, we're talking to you about this. We want a response.
I think it's easier to water yourself down as you get bigger and bigger so that people have less access to you. Because it's like, you're going to comment on everything about me anyways.
Right.
So I'm not going to put myself out there for easier hits. So it's like, I'm going to read or write this thing and not comment on any of this other stuff because you're already coming for me. So I'm not going to add more fuel to it.
Oh, we're preaching in here. Yes, God.
I really want a like study. I don't know if we'll ever get it, but I am just so curious about the mental well-being of people who have large followings on the internet and how that literally changes their perception of themselves and what they feel okay with. Like just having that many people criticizing you, I would love if we did something where we could be like, okay, this causes this harm and we need to have these. Yeah.
I can't, because I'm at like 40 or something, which is enough. But so people who have like over 100,000 or a million, No. I can't fathom it. But I also can't wait for that study and also someone to go in depth on parasocial relationships because it's getting weird. It's
Right.
strange out here.
Oh, I was reading some research on that because in my real life, I study stress responses, and so I was looking at, this is going to go down like a rabbit hole, but I was looking at some of what you're talking about, Heather, but there's not a lot of frameworks out yet. But what I will say is that I think I read one study that essentially for some creators, if there's a safety factor that comes into play, there's some similarities to like PTSD symptoms, right? So we're talking about now creators should have some kind of internet safety plan. What?
Yeah.
Now, I will say someone reached out to me and they were like, oh, you work at filling the blank. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I have never said where I worked. And I think what happened is the person went back on like an old photo and where I work was in the background and they had to like zoom in to see the logo. And so every now and again, you'll see like I'll go through and like archive things because like, and I'm sure it was innocent. I'm sure it was fine. But it was also scary because we had never interacted. And so they were like, oh, I'm going to be here and can we meet in person? I'm like, no.
Right.
So if you're here, I'm sorry. I don't mean to like out you, but like it freaks me out. But again, like it's all of that to think about. If you had 1 million DM or 1 million followers and even 30 DMs talking about, oh, I saw that you're at this restaurant.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I only have 3,000, 3,500 or whatever. And I have definitely had some like creepy comments where it's like, you're overstepping. Like, don't ask me for my phone number. We're not best friends. We don't know each other. Like, you watch my content and I appreciate that you're here and interested, but like, we're not best friends. Don't ask me where I live. Don't like, don't overstep. I can't even imagine at it.
I think one, I know Ashley has talked about running into a viewer at the grocery store and stuff and just, feeling so uncomfortable that like this person knows so much about her. But I also think that's where it can be really helpful that your content is based on something other than your life. So we are basing our content around books, and you can talk to me about books all day, every day, and I really haven't had anyone be intrusive. But like the content that I'm putting out there is not based on me, my life, my relationship, my kids. It's not. It's not. You don't have to know any of the things in my life to watch my content.
Family bloggers need to be put in jail.
And like, I'll talk about some things. I'll talk about, I don't like reading about this because it's, part of my lived experience or what have you. I'll talk about, growing up in a super religious conservative family and things like that. But like, you're not invited to comment on my family or, like any of the things. It's just, if we have this shared experience, I'm letting you know I have that shared experience. And there are plenty of shared experiences that I'm not going to tell you. I don't feel comfortable talking about it online. It's not something that I need. My nephew is trying to video call me. He turned 3 yesterday. But like, genuinely, you can watch all of the content I put out, and there's a lot of things you don't know, and you definitely don't know about the people that I love that did not volunteer to make a channel on YouTube. And like my kids, they would be full-time YouTubers if I let them, right? They love it. They watch YouTube, they want to do that. And I'm like, no, because I understand the real life consequences of that potentially. And you might see their face in a video here or there, but you're not going to know anything about them. You're not going to know about their bad days. You're not going to know about their struggles. Like, is none of your business. And it's not, I personally think that is like wildly irresponsible to think that it is my right as their parent to share what they're going through for content for an audience that doesn't know us.
I won't even put my husband on camera because he did not choose to start this channel. And so, like, I will never put him on camera. And I know that there are big creators who have made that same choice and then are criticized for it. And like, people make comments and judgments about their significant other about why they're not on camera. When in
Right.
Are
reality,
they real? Yeah.
they're
They just don't want to be on the video.
yeah, I don't owe you access to my family.
Right.
Or
And
people
your
who-
family's comfort is more important than your viewers, desire to know them. If my husband is okay being in a video, then he's okay being in a video. You don't get to demand that he be in a video.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting when there was a creator, she's in the beauty community, and she was doing a lot of boyfriend and her content, and then he just like disappeared. So, you know, people were like asking, and I remember thinking like, if she broke up with him, why do you think she needs to share that with us? Even if she is friends with some of you, like, why would she? And she had to do a full video about like how horribly how horrible the breakup was. And I was just like, how did we get here? And I think it's a little bit of like that parasocial relationship where you think you are friends with the person and you expect them to share things about them. And if they try to put a boundary on that relationship or that dynamic, it feels like you're not friends anymore. So you go on that. I don't know how y'all do it. I will. I can't. I cannot. I can't even get the words out.
We don't have too many problems yet. I think it is mostly people even larger than us, but it really does kind of make it where it's like, it's okay if I don't grow that much because I don't want those problems. When I go in my YouTube studio right now, I'm down a subscriber a day. I don't know what it is, but every day we're down one more. I'm just like,
I think it's because
okay.
you tell people the truth. It's like, you can leave,
Right.
right? And I don't think some viewers want to hear that. They want to feel like you're going to miss them when they're gone.
I don't know you. I can't even tell who it was. Like, unless you interact with me in some way, which I love. I love having people interact either in the comments or like messaging me on Instagram. Like, I'm super happy if you're like, hey, I read that book that you talked about or whatever. Like, I'm thrilled to talk about that. But like, if you just unsubscribe, it's not like I know who unsubscribed. And honestly, I unsubscribe all the time. All the time. Like, I'm not watching this anymore. And then I just leave. Okay. We're gonna wrap up. I only have a couple tiny little things. So, what would you say to someone who is struggling because they're in a non-reading season? I know in the years that I didn't read as much because of college and having babies and just not like knowing what books to pick up, I wasn't online or anything for that yet. I still like considered myself a reader and I missed it. But I didn't read much, but I think sometimes when you have a big life change or you have things added to your life is only able to encompass so much. Something has to go. And sometimes that's reading, and sometimes that can be really hard for you as an individual. Like you're struggling because either you feel like you should be reading or you feel like you're the problem or people aren't going to want to follow you anymore if you're not reading and that's why they're here. Like what would you say? I know I would just say it happens to all of us. You probably are going to have seasons either where you're reading a little bit less because life is happening to you or mental health is happening to you, or you're just I don't know, interested in something else. And even if you desperately want to be reading, you're probably not going to read at the exact same consistent rate from your first book to your last. Like, there's going to be lulls, there's going to be highs and lows. Maybe when you first join the community, you're reading like a lot more than you ever were before. That can't continue to accelerate. At some point, it's got to level off or dip down. I know I've consistently read less every single year that I've been on BookTube, and I'm completely fine with that because I'm still reading as much as I want. It's just the number is not as much, right? So like if you're struggling, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be in there. It has to have fluctuation. It must. All things must in life. So it's okay if that's where you're at right now.
I always say there's so many responsibilities and things we have to do every single day. And making your hobby one of those things is so detrimental. Like, it should not be something that you ever have to do. You have to go to your job, you have to pay your bills, you have to take care of your kids, you have to feed yourself. Don't put the added pressure onto a hobby, something that brings you joy, because at the end of the day, you don't have to do those things. You don't have to go on social media. You don't have to read 100 books. You don't have to do any of those things. And I think we can beat ourselves up, and we have to remember that don't don't make your hobbies like a job. It doesn't need to be a job. It doesn't need to be a requirement. It doesn't need to be something that you have to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think like when I feel like I'm in this, like I'm just not reading, I'm a bad bookish content creator. I go back and I'm like, girl, you read 5 books. Calm down. Okay. Like it is not that serious. And I have like a really heart to heart conversation with myself. Like, this is something that should be bringing me joy, right? Like, no one is putting this pressure on me. No one cares if I post on Tuesday or Saturday or do a live whenever, right? Like, people are coming because they want to spend time with me. And for now, that is when I post, right? Or if we're in group chats or whatever. So give yourself a little bit of grace or a lot of grace, because if you push yourself to read, are you going to enjoy it in that season? Probably not. So what was the point either way? So don't push yourself. Give yourself the time to read and give a hobby. I think there should always be something that is separate from your production of content, right? Like, if it feels edifying for you to have your bookish content together, you need to have like something separate from that that is purely something that my therapist and I are working on. There needs to be a hobby that is purely for you, for me. It isn't tied to like a gift or content or anything. It is literally just for my pure enjoyment. And then if I don't do it, it's fine, but at least it isn't like making me spin into that loop of guilt that I'm not
Yeah.
doing enough of it. And I think part of which is what we talked a little bit about, like when you tie those two things together, the productivity and the consumption, all of that starts to get murky. So
Mm-hmm.
give your and I think it is very critical that any content creator takes breaks. If you don't have breaks built into your schedule, you're going to have these perpetual loops of burnout where you don't want to do anything and everything is impacted. So you need to have natural breaks. That's why we should have vacation at work. That's why we should have summer breaks in school. Like, those things are to help you reset and refocus. And then maybe you're not reading, but you're talking about books that you love. And I think that still counts too, right? So I think
Absolutely.
it's a little bit of reframing and just reminding yourself, like, it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be fun. And if it's not fun, stop doing it. That's
Yeah.
the motto for the rest of the year. It's not fun. I don't want to do it.
I think even with some social media platforms, like for me, TikTok, I'm not a creator on there. I don't answer any notifications. All of my notifications are like maxed out on TikTok. I don't see it. You send me a TikTok on there, I don't see it. I don't see your reply to my comment. I don't see any of the things. I do not open the notifications on there. I am just scrolling. I am just here to have fun. I do not have to feel like I should be making a TikTok. I do not have to feel like I should be watching your TikTok because you support me and I support you. Like, whatever. I'm just scrolling. And I think that can be super helpful, even in bookish spaces, to be like, I don't have to be a creator everywhere. I can just be here to enjoy myself. And this has nothing to do with my own content production.
Yeah. I make TikToks randomly, but they're rarely about books. But I'm mostly a viewer because I just, lay in bed and scroll. But
Yeah.
I mean, I am that person in the season of life not reading nearly as much. And it is so hard, even if I can say all the things and all the wisdoms, but somehow they don't go through my skull. One thing I would say is that reading books and buying books are two separate hobbies. So don't feel bad if you're buying the books and you can't read them. It's different. We're collecting with art. But yeah, I'm trying to take in everything that was said because I have my channel that grew from something I don't do anymore. So of course my views have decreased significantly, but there's nothing I can do to bring that back because I mentally cannot force myself to pump out content. Like that was my only job. I now have a full-time job that drains me every like Monday through Friday. It is draining. After I get off, I'm like trying not to go directly to lay down. But then I have a Patreon, so I feel bad there, and I still try to, like keep up and do different things outside of reading. But it can be really hard when you especially coming from somewhere where that was kind of like your full-time thing, all of your content. I had time to read. That's all I was doing. Was reading to make content and reading things I enjoy. So I don't have any advice because I'm trying to take the advice. So, we're out here struggling in these streets. And just look at my books. So I'm like, you're beautiful. One day I'm gonna read you. It's gonna be okay, baby.
I'm waiting for the sunscreen content.
I got plenty in there.
People want it.
But I think
of not wanting to, or being nervous to make content, or not nervous, but if you get used to having a certain amount of views or something, that YouTube creator app, my nemesis, because it's 10 out of 10 your video's doing terrible today.
Plus this time of year is just bad for content. It is. It's not just you, it's everyone. I tell myself that every day. It's not just you, it's everyone.
I don't want to see this, but because it's outside of books, I do have a lot of other I love skincare. Obviously, I love sunscreen. I like all these different things, but anytime you put that out there, because that's not what your audience came for, because it doesn't do well, then the algorithm punishes you. But so anyway, all that to say, I'm struggling and I'm trying to work on it.
Yeah, I definitely again, reason number 1 million why I don't have a YouTube, that is another stressor I do not need. But I think because I like numbers, so I have a spreadsheet. So I have a sense of, I should expect the cycle or the season of my reading will go down in August and September, because that's the beginning of the school year. And I'm going to be over places. So it helps me think about okay, I'm going to go into this naturally. So be prepared for it. And I have a book journal. And when I tell you, I have created all of these extra pages when I'm not reading, because I'm like, what about if I had this spread in my book journal? And it feels like I'm still participating, but again, it's just for me. It isn't for other people. So I don't usually show my journal to folks, but again, it just makes me feel like I'm doing something. But what, the one thing that I hate with Kindle now, it feeds and I'm not a competitive person, but I want to get all of those little stupid, you know what I'm talking about, right? The
bookmark
thing. Yeah. So there's that part. And I just missed the window for a perfect reading streak, and I was like, God damn. Anyway, but like I'm always trying to find like little things to remind me about like the people who are around. They're gonna make sure that I'm okay, check on me, and I feel like those are the people that are gonna probably stay if I never make content ever again, right? And that's actually who I care about. If everybody else left, that's not on me, right? Because my orientation to my platform isn't to read to produce, it's to read to share. And hopefully, like, if you read the book, then we're going to talk about it. I love it when someone DMs me about some random book I said in my stories that I forgot about. And it just reminds me again, like, oh yeah, that book was good. Let me go back to my review, or let me read the other reviews, which, by the way, reading reviews count as reading. Okay. So give yourself that.
I
Because
totally
then I'm
agree.
like, oh yes, I love this book. Oh yes, this is why I hated this book. You know what I mean? So I give myself little treats here and there, but I always like treat yourself. So there's that.
I agree. I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves like it's not that serious. If we don't read more than 10 books in a year, it doesn't matter. Like this, there's no like goal at the end. There's no trophy at the end of this game. And I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to create the content that makes it better in Creator Studio and read those books and all this stuff. And what at the end of the day, like it's not that big of a deal. It's not that deep. It is just books and videos and pictures.
Right. And none of us are going to be content creators for forever. Like we're not. So you can't have your entire like self-worth tied into people telling you what a great job you did on
Well, I try to
content.
play it at least once a month.
Yeah.
And then someone will be like, oh, I really like it when you do this. I'm like, oh, that's the next post. Let me post it. So yes, I definitely feel like I want to quit every few weeks. So
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I used to do 3 videos a week, and dropping to 2 videos was a great choice for me. Now, it resulted in lower stats because there's one less video. 52 videos of the year I'm not making anymore. But at the same time, I I would have burned out, and I knew that, and I stopped before that happened, and it was a great choice despite what the numbers may say about it, right? Because I love making content, and the amount of content I make is directly reflective of that, and I try not to be like, "Oh, I love this so much, let me make more," because I'm like, "No, that's a bad idea." Um, but, like, if I didn't love it, I would at least cut back, which I have already done, and it was a great choice for me. You know what? This is like tied in, but you know what? I absolutely cannot stand. And I don't say anything because you don't need to comment on everything. But when people are like, I'm sorry I'm not posting today, or I'm not posting this week, or I'm sorry I haven't been online for the last 4 hours. I'm just like, no one noticed. What are you talking about right now? Or they'll be like, I'm sorry, my whole family died. I don't think I'm gonna get a video up this week. I'm like, why are you even like apologizing right now? Like, would you calm down?
But they
There's
do that because
something.
there are, unfortunately, those weirdos who would be like, oh my God, where are you? Your video was supposed to go up on Tuesday. What's happening? What's going on? Or messaging people. So sadly, they do that because
I
they'll
don't care
have
about
those
those
people.
weirdos though. They can wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
Myself to
like,
them.
you just gonna have to wait.
That's why I got rid of a schedule entirely. I don't even pretend like there's a
Oh, yeah.
schedule. There's no schedule
It
because
goes up.
sometimes I'm gonna ghost you. That's gonna be a thing.
I'm like,
I'll have a video ready and I'll just keep forgetting to put it public. And I'm like, oh, guess it's gonna go later.
and people don't notice the absence of something nearly as much as they notice the thing. Like, I don't really know. There's very few creators that I'm like, oh, don't they usually post today? Like, I'll notice if they're missing for weeks at a time. I definitely would.
Daily.
But I don't know your schedule. I don't.
yeah, I think I posted a few months ago my schedule, and I think everyone thought I was like neurotic. And I was like, no. It's just that I enjoy knowing what my day is going to consist of, right?
Right.
But when I tell you I switched from posting 4 times a week to, I think it went from 3 to 2 and then it's back up to 3, nobody noticed. And I was like, oh, so I can shift the days around.
Right.
No one will notice. It's the same 10 people who comment on my stuff, and that's all I care about, right? Like, so,
Right.
you know, and I think some of that too is when you tie your content to your productivity or whatever, you feel this imaginary responsibility to people to produce stuff. And you don't want to let people down. So I get it, but I'm like, do not apologize for taking breaks. Do not apologize for listening to your body.
Right.
And resting when it says to rest, because when you don't, other bad things happen.
Right.
So take your breaks, change your schedule if you need to. If someone asks, you can clarify. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But literally, Instagram's new algorithm is forcing creators to post every day. And there's a formula where they're going to push your content if you post in a certain way. And it works, sure. But who is dedicated to running after the algorithm consistently that changes every few months? It
Like,
just is a fool's game for anybody.
Twice a
So
day,
take a break.
make 3 reels,
Yep.
16 stories,
Right.
and we'll think about sharing your content to your followers.
And for most of us, we're not making any money off of this, or not enough money off of this. So it's like,
Right.
why are we pretending like this is a full-time job that we need to like
Right.
dedicate all this effort to, when in reality it's like, this started as something fun because I
Yeah.
took pictures of books.
And also, the algorithm is like,
about it though.
Go ahead.
When you put in the time you create content, read, script, it starts to feel like a full-time job.
Absolutely.
And so maybe a little bit of that responsibility of like, oh my gosh, I didn't do it, is because there's naturally a consequence when you don't do your job. But again, this is a hobby, but don't overstretch yourself for, reading that 500-page fantasy book.
Right. Like, I just refuse to post for the algorithm. And probably if I posted for the algorithm, I would grow more, right? I mean, they do go hand in hand, but at the same time, I'm never going to get enough out of this for me to be doing it without enjoying it, right? I have to do it because I'm enjoying it, and that means that I am not going to punish myself with frequency or with what topic I'm willing to post on because of the algorithm. The algorithm is not going to decide what I do with my time. It's just not, because even if I cater to it, to the degree where I am, millions of followers on YouTube, you're still going to burn out at some point. It is not something that one human can attain for forever. And I know even my favorite content creators, if they are taking a break or are not posting, I'm just watching other stuff. That's the reality of it. So why on earth would I want them to cause harm to themselves in any way so I can get my video? I wouldn't. And anyone who does, again, I'm just like, you're not the type of person that I want to allowed to control my life, because I would never want that for someone else. So I don't respect you if you are like, where's my video? I literally don't care about you or what you're going through.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we're having this conversation about your follow count doesn't tie directly into the quality of your content, or if you're a good enough content creator. Because I remember a long time, people were like, I've been in the booktube community for X amount of years and I can't break fill in the blank. Or I've been around and so came behind me and they blew up. I'm just like, I mean, if that's a goal for you, great. But at the same time, I think when you have like a really huge peak in followers, a lot of those followers are vanity followers. They only really are coming to you for specific things, and they are not like your core followers or mutuals that you would be engaging in the way you're talking about, Heather.
Right.
So the number doesn't really say anything about your engagement. It doesn't really say a lot about the quality of your content. It just means that you have more eyes on you. And again, I've said how I feel about it, but I think once you start with chasing the algorithm and chasing the follow count, right? Like then you start making decisions that might not allow you to take that break, or might not allow you to give yourself the grace to not feel guilty about taking the break. So do whatever makes you happy, but I really do think like there's something to be said if your front facing goal is to have a lot of followers. You're gonna have to make some maybe not so great decisions in order to get your followers, keep your followers, and to also maintain the engagement. And I hate to say this, but a lot of booktubers that I really, really loved watching, they aren't here anymore because of the things that you all are talking about. It because they couldn't keep up the pace. They didn't allow themselves to like, life happened, or they're not reading as much, so they don't feel like they can create content. And I'm just like, well, do whatever makes you happy, and your real life is more important. But it's just really sad to see when people don't feel like they can take the break that they need, or do something different for the moment that they're in the season of not reading.
I think gaining followers can be a bit of a game of luck sometimes too. If you got put onto this page, or if so and so put your channel or whatever. And so I think we can beat ourselves up a little bit when it's like half the time it was not that their content was any better than your content. It was because they drew the lucky straw and so shared their stuff, and now they gained 3,000 followers overnight. And that shouldn't be tied to your self-worth, because that had nothing to do with them or you. It was pure chance that Reese shared their reel or whatever. Like it shouldn't be tied to you as a person.
Yep. And of course it's natural to feel some type of way when it's like, all right, okay, I'm happy for you. But like, getting to talk about the books that you like, and getting to find other people who like those books as well, and who you genuinely enjoy their personality, their content, just getting to talk to them in the DMs. Maybe they don't even make content. You just get to talk to them. That is its own value. And it can be worthwhile just for that. And like you were saying, people who don't make content anymore, there are some of us that like specifically miss that person, that creator. And not that anyone has to feel that they have to keep making content for the people, but just like whoever you get close to, or whoever you align with taste wise, personality wise, all the things, like it doesn't matter how many people are in that group values you because you are what they like.
And social media has skewed our idea of what like a large number of people is. And so it's like if I think about the fact that there are 3,500 people following me on Instagram, and if 3,500 people were standing in front of me while I was talking, I'd run away. Like I don't want all you looking at me. And so I think we have this vastly skewed idea of like what a big following is. It's like I would never talk to 3,500 people directly ever. Not ever.
Right. And Vina, if like someone stopped making content for forever and we never found out that they were okay and they just stopped making content, that would live in my mind. But you were missing for Tuesday afternoon. I just assumed you were doing something. Yeah. Hey, we are definitely like shutting it down in a moment.
Yeah, I definitely think there are folks that I remember like vividly where I would make sure that every week I watch all of their content. And, I think in some cases people had kids, married, divorced, had a death in the family. And so they took a step back. And I miss their voice, but I miss like that time I spent with them more than the content,
Yeah.
right? And so, but again, knowing that they're off taking care and centering their real lives, I think that's more important than getting a fucking video, right? Like,
Amen.
yes, if you said you're never gonna make another video, I'll be like, okay, I get you, girl. I'm gonna just go back to the ones that you posted. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
there are favorites along there. But now, if you start like removing videos, you know which one, Heather? The one you just posted recently about book something and murder. I'm like, why is this in my head?
Sex books
I
and
think like
murder.
so like they're like videos that I think if anybody, stop, they're the favorites. So you'll just go back to and hope
Yeah.
like you can continue to enjoy.
I know I do that for some creators
Yeah.
that don't really create. And also, even like Jess, you can still be in the community without making regular content. Like being in people's DMs or even like hopping on a live show or whatever, but getting to still interact with you as a person is the treat.
Right.
Like that's the thing that I want.
Why are you hyping up your podcast? Don't you have a podcast? Did I make that up?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow, some books like, well, I need to get better. So
yeah.
So yeah, there are other things that people are doing that you can like still interact with them, and so don't be weird.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We kind of talked about this. I have to say, I think it's kind of easy to make content without tying your reading to it. But maybe I'm just creative like that.
Gosh, we can't all be.
Hello, you have a whole journal. I'm like, oh,
Heather is so prepared. I'm like, girl, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. And she's like, well, I on all these, my calendar.
Listen,
if any of us ever need content, we can just go to Heather's video.
My actual life is not put together.
Give her credit,
Heather again.
Give her credit if you're going to use her content.
Yes, this is the name of Jess's podcast with Mara. It's Welcome to Our Open Tabs, which I just watched your Shiny Happy People episode.
We just recorded one yesterday.
Did you?
About the Sound of Freedom movie. Yikes.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. I just wish my job wasn't it's just so draining. And I just like want to lay on the floor and do nothing. At first, I'm like, we have to do things. But
listen, I don't know if you all know Brie from 11 Words. She had a what's it called, channel members live show last night, which I'm not a channel member. I'm sorry. I don't pay for anybody. I'm just free. I'm just here for the free. But she was like, if anyone wants to hop on, like you can. And everyone's like, oh, I have to work. Oh, I'll be there. Oh, I'm going to be at the Barbie movie. I was like, I don't want to come. I have a live show tomorrow and I do not have the bandwidth to both. I will not be there. Thank you so much.
It's a lot.
But like it's okay. It's okay to be like, it's so draining to be on for content or to be even like out and about with people. Obviously it's not for everybody, but for introverts, that's literally what that means. It doesn't mean you're shy. It doesn't mean you're a homebody. It means you get energy by being by yourself and a group of people drains you. That's all it means. Pet peeve. I can't.
And sometimes it's okay to be like, there's no reason. I just really don't want to do this.
I don't want to do it.
I don't need to.
Sounds terrible.
Just don't want to.
And it's okay. It's okay to be like, I don't think so. All right. we're basically done here. Do you guys have anything that you hope gets fixed for the book community that we change in the future? I know one thing I would love, this is like a pipe dream, but I dream of a world like this. I would love if the people who don't know anything about the authors, not the people that use that as the reason why they should have to read anyone but white authors, but the people who like they don't know anything about the authors. They're just picking up a book that they're hearing about. I would love for us to reach the point where the chances, the likelihood of that book being diverse is just as good of a chance of it not, because the whole point is you don't have as good of a chance of it being not. You have to do it on purpose. I would love, even if it wasn't all of publishing, even if it was just our little book community that you don't know really anything about it, but you've got a 50-50 chance of it having some sort of representation. I would love that.
That would be nice. I would say the other one is to not have those like top 3 conversations ever again.
Oh
Like
my God.
I don't want to have a
Please.
conversation about whether or not audiobooks is reading. I don't want to have like those. I would, if we never talked about them again, I would die happy.
Please. Oh, yes, release us from the shackles of these circular conversations.
Romance needs a happily ever after. Like, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
It's tiring. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it would just be just people having more grace with themselves and with people that they watch, and just being more open-minded that most people don't have negative intentions or bad intentions, and yeah, we all learn and grow at different rates, and so just to be don't always just think the worst about someone the first time. Now a pattern that's different, but someone does one thing or maybe something you don't like, but then also realize that's a whole nother conversation. But like everything, I think there's levels to things, and like you can, like you said earlier, you can acknowledge something that's problematic and still enjoy it. I just think it's a just be nicer. Don't be out here writing dissertations in the comments to people.
And as someone who has written a dissertation, it's not fun. So knock it off. Yeah, I think I would agree with all of the 3 comments. I think a big picture for me, I want people to be able to find their group. And I think that's the hardest part when you're new coming in, trying to find your people. And sometimes if you're coming in during one of those like repeat conversations, it's like, oh, well, this is not what I want to be a part of. So I think like the biggest thing is to be able to find your people who will actually want everybody read with you, who will meet you at cons, or I've heard of people doing like yearly reader groups where they meet up. I'm like, that is the type of stuff that I imagine joining the community. I've seen where they're doing like trips together now. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to tie, reading and trips together. That would be lovely. So I think that would be, in addition to what you all said, like finding your friends, finding your people in the community. That would be, I think that would make the exhaustion of it all less annoying.
Yeah. Sometimes it just takes time and a lot of times because the algorithms are not that helpful. It's like you are only seeing the most popular creators, and that's not who you're going to be having lots of conversations with, because they have a million DMs. They already have their friend group. They've been here for a while, all of that. So when you do, like, I don't know, I feel like it's almost a trickle effect. Like you find this one and they mention this person over here, and then, you keep following the trail till you have like a whole group of people. Yeah, it's awesome, but it takes so much time. All right. That's it. We pretty exhaustively talked about a lot of different things. This was really fun. I'm so glad that you all talked about it with me. I feel like this was a great group conversation and we did a good job. Go us. And yeah, to the chat.
And celebrate, go buy some books.
Or not. Or not. You
Or
could
not,
just read a book.
or not. But you know, treat
Whatever works
yourself
with your
however
bank
that
account.
looks.
If you want to, I'm rooting for you. But if you don't want to, I'm also rooting for you. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. It was really fun. Loved doing it.